Lectionary group and I on Thursday decided on a sermon series idea. We're going to be looking at the different disciples from now until Easter Sunday. And the first disciple we're going to work with is not the first disciple mentioned in Scripture. He's certainly not the most famous one. This is really the only portion of Scripture that he finds himself in. But his name is Nathaniel. And the thing about Nathaniel was that he didn't mind saying what was on his mind. In that respect, I suppose that he was not a lot different than his better-known fellow disciple Simon Peter, who blurted out all sorts of things that people who had more of a filter might think twice about saying. Nathaniel was transparent, he was honest, he was authentic. He didn't try to pull the wool over anybody's eyes. Nathaniel didn't mind saying what was on his mind, so when his friend Philip searched him out and found him to tell him about Jesus and share that Jesus was the one that Moses had written about, and the Messiah Israel had been looking for, and went on to say that Jesus was from Nazareth, Nathaniel came out with it. Nazareth? That one-horse, two-bit village? Nazareth, that low-class, crime-infested dump? You've got to be kidding me, Philip. Okay, so he didn't quite put it that way. He simply said, can anything good come out of Nazareth? By saying that, Nathaniel showed not just what was on his mind, but also what was in his heart. And what was in his heart wasn't very pretty. I think Nathaniel had come to believe and internalize and even to propagate what other people told him about Nazareth, which was some variation on what you can hear about all sorts of places depending on where you live. You know, you can't really trust anybody from there. Nobody from there could amount to anything. Those people are a bunch of hicks, or moochers, or criminals, rapists, or snobs, or jerks. I remember when Judith and I were moving from the two churches we served in upstate New York to become co-pastors of the church that we served in Statesville, North Carolina. Before they ever met us, before we preached our first sermons there was a congregational vote to approve the recommendation of the pastor nominating committee to call us. And there were people who told us later that they voted against the call because we were Yankees. And everyone knew that nothing good could come from the north, especially not New York. Never mind that Judith was born and raised in that particular town of Statesville, North Carolina. It's just, well, when you live in Nazareth for any period of time, can you really be trusted anymore? Nathaniel was just saying what was on his mind and in his heart, and it revealed the kind of preconceptions and prejudice that cause us to write people off before we've ever even met them. And if we're honest with ourselves, we've all done this to some degree or another, no matter how high-minded and open and tolerant we fancy ourselves to be. And this weekend, when we celebrate the birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., it's worth remembering what he said about white moderates in Birmingham. The ones who kept saying, just give it time. Things are going to change eventually. It's worth remembering what he had to say about northern whites who looked down their noses at southerners, but redlined their neighborhoods to keep African Americans out. Because maybe something good can come from Nazareth, but you don't want to take a chance on having someone from there 3 doors down from you. Can anything good come from Nazareth, or from some other country, or continent, or class, or race, or tribe, or party, or orientation, is the ugly question people have asked out loud or under their breath, or in the quiet space of their hearts for thousands, even millions of years. Calling whole groups of people names, or saying their country or their city or their town is some sort of hole in the ground, is a window into a base tribalism that reveals the worst of human nature And we have to be able to say that. We have to be able to name that. The beauty of today's text is that Nathaniel moves beyond that, and in so doing becomes the first recovering racist in the Gospel of John. In response to Nathaniel's question, Philip says, "Come and see." Come and meet the man. Come, get beyond your preconceived notions and your settled opinions and get to know somebody from Nazareth. You might find they're a lot like you. You might meet Jesus. This is, of course, what Nathaniel does. And as he's heading in the direction of Jesus the Nazarene, he is stopped in his tracks by what Jesus says, which is, "Here is truly an Israelite in whom there is no deceit." Hearing this, Nathaniel thinks, how does this guy know me? And because he thinks it, he says it, which may be why Jesus says he's an Israelite in whom there is no deceit. He just has no filter. To Nathanael's, "How do you know me?" Jesus replies, "I saw you under the fig tree before Philip called you." And that's when Nathanael exclaimed, "Rabbi, you are the Son of God. You are the King of Israel." Wow! That was a pretty quick turnaround, wasn't it? Going from, can anything good come out of Nazareth, to, "Rabbi, you are the King of Israel. You are the Son of God." I've been puzzling out why Jesus telling Nathanael that he saw him under the fig tree would lead to such a dramatic turnaround from skepticism to praise. And what occurred to me is that in the Bible, especially the New Testament, a fig tree is never just a fig tree. It's always a symbol. Diana Butler Bass reminded me of something that she wrote, that the fig tree is the third tree mentioned in the book of Genesis. The first is the tree of life. The second is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the third is the fig tree. Why the fig tree? Well, fig tree is important because the fig tree provides the leaves that Adam and Eve used to cover up their sin, their nakedness, their shame, their humanness. To say, "I saw you under the fig tree," could be Jesus' way of saying, "Hey, as honest as you are, and even though you're not from Nazareth like me, I also know that you too try to cover things up. I know what you're trying to cover up, in fact." It sort of makes you wonder what Nathaniel was doing under that fig tree. And in the New Testament, the fig tree is a symbol of the fruitfulness or the lack thereof of God's people. "By your fruits you shall know them." Jesus tells a parable about a fig tree that isn't bearing fruit, and the landowner wants to destroy it, but the one who tends it says, just give me a few more years to water and fertilize it, and let's see what happens. And then later, Jesus talks about the fig tree being in leaf, and that would be the sign that the summer is near. During Holy Week, when a fig tree isn't bearing fruit and Jesus maybe is a little stressed, he says in a peak of anger, "I'm going to blast it," and he does. So a fig tree is never just a fig tree. It's a sign that what we say and do matters. So bear fruit, John the Baptist said, that shows that you've turned towards God. What happens with Nathaniel is that he gets beyond prejudice and sees in Jesus someone who sees him and doesn't write him off. And that's what it means to see like Christ sees. And when Philip invites him to come and see Jesus, maybe he's invited Nathaniel not just to come and see Jesus, but to begin to see like Jesus sees. not with arms folded in judgment, not distracted by all the cares and worries of the world, not blinded by preconceived notions, not impeded by prejudice, but the way Mary Oliver talks about in the poem on the front of your handout. She says, I look morning and night. I am never done with looking. Looking, I mean, not standing around, but standing around with your arms open. I was standing around with my arms open when I went to my mailbox this week. And I found there a letter addressed to Pastors Aaron, Katie, Susan, and the congregation of Emmanuel Church. It started by quoting John 15, 12 to 15, about loving one another as I have loved you. This is Christ's commandment. And greater love has no one than to lay down his life for his friends. And it went on to say this. My new friends, thank you for the wonderful and warm hospitality you showed me and all the other homeless at your church. You came into my life at a time when I had no friends, at least friends who do not use drugs and alcohol, and housed and fed and clothed me. At no time with you did I feel like a man with nothing. You all made me feel like the richest man in McLean. It is impossible to explain what you have done for me. Thank you seems so small and paltry. Can anything good come out of Nazareth? It's a question that might be asked about us, or about anyone.